We're going to zoom out a little bit, talk about AI, but also maybe some other innovations that are happening in the newsrooms. And we have some great guests and a host with Ivan Georgiev, who's a journalist and news anchor and reporter for BTV, Bulgarian television, for 18 years. As a journalist on the ground, Ivan has covered some of the leading international and regional events. He was granted the World Press Institute Fellowship in 2012 and is the author of numerous TV documentaries. And as people trickle in, I think you could just get going. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being with us today. Once again, my name is Ivan Georgiev, and I'm a reporter and anchor with BTV Bulgarian National Television for the last 17, 18 years. I'm also privileged to be a World Press Institute Fellow, class of 2012, and although it's quite a debatable topic, you should know that nevertheless it is considered by a few to be the best class ever, right, David? Yeah, that's an inside joke. I saw many familiar faces in the public and on this stage today, and having in mind that most of us are people who devoted their lives to media and journalism, it won't come as a surprise when I tell you that being a reporter and a journalist feels a lot like going to school every day. Mostly because we get to learn new stuff about the world that we live in, but also we learn new stuff about our audiences, about ourselves, and the very craft of journalism making. Undoubtedly, one of the best lessons that I got so far came from a professor of mine in the United States. He was granted with the Pulitzer Prize for Investigative Journalism. His name is John Ullman. He once told me on campus in St. Thomas University in St. Paul, Minnesota, that the only true capital you will ever have as a journalist is people's trust, and that's it, nothing else. And in this sense, I know my colleagues here in Bulgaria have been getting poorer and poorer, metaphorically speaking, losing the trust of our viewers, listeners, and readers. And as far as I understood from the previous presentations here, that is a global trend when it comes to traditional media. A respected colleague of mine described the local media landscape in Bulgaria a couple of weeks ago with the words truth desert, in which traditional media have strayed away from their public role as gatekeepers in a society with the worst media literacy in the European Union and on the European continent in general, unlike Finland, for example, which is considered to be the European country best equipped to withstand the impact of fake news and propaganda. Having all that in mind, when I received the invitation for today's conference by WPI, I thought to myself, yeah, artificial intelligence, innovations, it all sounds so sexy, but what's beyond the visible horizon? Could it be the poison pill that shatters the fragile equilibrium between us and our public, or it could give us the magic cure to more independent and, most importantly, self-sustainable news media organizations here in Bulgaria? Should we fear innovation because we fail to provide our audiences with old-fashioned in people's trust journalism, or should we embrace the tools of information age in pursuit of new answers to the odd questions of media freedom? Can we develop AI system tools for journalists' purpose the same way we develop our audiences and train our interns in our newsrooms? We will try to look for answers on those questions with the speakers today. I'm really privileged to present our exceptional speakers on the topic at hand, newsroom innovation opportunities in the information age. From your right to your left, I would like to present Mr. Philip Hatcher-Moore, journalist at BBC News Labs. Next to him is Ms. Kristina Stoitsova, Interim Director, Data Science, Financial Times. Then Mr. Rune Ytreberg, Data Editor, Data Journalism by iTromsø, Norway. And then, last but not least, Ville Juutilainen, Head of Data Investigator, Finnish broadcasting company. Please, guys, the floor is yours. You have 5 to 6 minutes to share with us your general thoughts on today's topic. Go ahead.
First of all, thank you very much to the organizers for inviting me here. It's an honor to speak to you all today. My name is Philip Patchen-Moore. I'm a journalist in a group called Newslabs at the BBC, which is the UK's public service broadcaster. And just whilst I wait for the slides to load, I suppose my background is somewhat varied. I began my education, I suppose, as studying computer science, and then moved away from that and from AI and moved into journalism, where I worked as a freelance photojournalist for about 10 years, all across the world. And in the last year, I've actually come full circle and I'm back into working in technology. Working with the BBC now, developing things like AI tools and all sorts of different innovation in the newsroom. Right. So Newslabs occupies this space in between technology, between the BBC's R&D unit, and journalism, the newsroom. And we're a group of just over a dozen people, predominantly software engineers, and a couple of people on the editorial side, like myself. And we are striving to build different tools to both help our journalists to improve their workflows, to allow them to do things that they can't do at the moment, or to release them from the drudgery of some of the things they have to do at the moment, but also in finding new ways of telling stories to our audiences, finding new ways to engage audiences across the UK and indeed across the world. So we work in a few different innovation spaces. There's the sort of back-end systems that could be anything from analysis of how our articles are performing to providing translation of things behind the scenes. There's, as I've said, some of the storytelling. We're looking at things like modular journalism, which is where you're breaking up stories into their fundamental units and serving them in different ways to different audiences depending on their preferences. Developing new audience experiences and figuring out new ways to engage with audiences as well. So it's not such a one-way street as it traditionally has been. And then the workflows, as I've said, is trying to improve the lives of journalists working on the news desk. And some of that does involve bits of generative AI. I should caveat that all of the work we do on generative AI at the moment is very much in the internal-only space. It's very experimental. There's nothing audience-facing in that at all. We're just seeing what we can do with it and how it might impact workflows as we go forward. So what I'd like to do during this brief presentation is just give an overview of a few different projects that we've touched on, not to go into the details of those, but hopefully more to spark some conversation during the panel. An example of some of the work we've done in improving workflows for journalists is a project we call Guiding Hand. And in the BBC, a lot of the images that you see on the news website are put there by the journalists themselves. It's not like the old school newspaper days where you had a picture editor who would source the images and sort of lay them out on the page. And not all of the journalists are as, I suppose, visually literate as others. So we wanted to build a tool to help them in the sort of automatic best presentation of certain images. So we were using technology such as facial recognition to identify people in pictures and to automatically crop those images so that they would best appear on the website. One other thing we've been working on recently is what we've called a AI chassis. So it's into our content publishing system in an experimental version of that, I should add. We've created a sort of a framework whereby you can use generative AI to do things like suggest headlines for journalists to use. And as I said, this is very much only an internal experimentation. And we work closely with lots of different teams across from the organization, from journalists to shape what they want to see in those headlines, to the editorial policy team and legal and things like that, to make sure that everything is sort of in line with all of the policies that we're developing and the ethics. But we want to sort of experiment with this space and see what we can do with the technology as it comes out. And on a similar note, this combines generative AI as well as new audience experiences, both for the back end for journalists and for the front end for audiences, where we're looking at new ways of explaining concepts to audiences. So, for example, I don't know how well you can see the little thing that's going on the right-hand side here, but we write a lot of stories where there's a lot of terms involved in those stories that we as journalists kind of understand, we use every day, but not necessarily all of our audiences do. I think the average reading age in the UK is about 9. So if you're writing with complex language, which fits into a reading age above that, you're cutting out sort of half of the audience almost. So we're wondering, can we explain some of these key terms in the article in an unobtrusive way so that it's not interrupting the flow for people who do know what they're talking about, but also providing ways to explain terms such as interest rates and inflation to audiences who don't necessarily know what that means. And we did this, we experimented to see if it saved time using generative AI to produce this rather than having journalists write the summaries themselves. In my opinion, in some testing of this, I found it harder to actually edit the copy and sub-edit it and make sure it was reasonable than I would have done to write it myself, but that was part of the experimentation we wanted to engage in. And then looking at other examples of AI, but not necessarily the generative AI sphere, we've done a project whereby we were looking at can we track the various uses of an original English language article as it's published in all of the different world service languages. The BBC operates in about 43 different languages around the world. And much of that content is produced by the individual teams in those countries, in those languages, but they also use content that comes from the central sort of English language output. And the BBC didn't have a particularly good way, certainly not an automated way, of tracking how widely that content was published and how well it performed. So we wanted to see if we could use automatic translation and content matching through natural language processing and things like that to see if we could match which articles came from which original sources, to see which of the original sources performed well. And this notion that we've talked about in a couple of the panels so far, the pre-bunking, the BBC is part of a coalition of organizations working around something called Project Origin, which is looking to see if we can securely embed metadata into images and videos that we publish to prove that the content is what it purports to be. So can we digitally sign content to say this is BBC content and it is what it purports it to be? So if someone has manipulated it, that chain of trust is broken, and as a viewer you could see that this is not authentic, it's been doctored. So we're working around spaces like that. And I'll talk lastly as well, this is less of an immediate technological innovation space and more of one of engaging with audiences in different ways. We're engaging with underserved parts of the UK audience to see what changes they would like to see in their the storytelling that they receive, and seeing if we can engage journalism in a completely different way. At the moment, journalism is traditionally written in what's called the inverted pyramid, where the most important facts are at the top and it tapers down, so that originally you could just cut off the bottom of an article if it didn't fit in that newspaper column. We're now questioning if that is the best way to tell the news in the current media environment, and so we're doing some much more sort of people-based experimentation and consultations to find out what the best way of doing that is. I think we can skip that. So thank you very much, and I shall hand over to the next speaker.
Hi, hello. My name is Kristina Stoitsova, and I'm a director of the data science team at the Financial Times. I have a couple of slides to show you, but I'll start introducing you into the topic while they appear. So when thinking about which aspect to touch on in this presentation, obviously the shiny, sexy, latest technology advancements in generative AI and large language models were one obvious choice. And in fact, I have a colleague of mine, David Jambazov, who is holding a workshop tomorrow morning, the first workshop tomorrow, to talk about LLMs and more specifically the types of experimentation that we are doing with large language models, with text vectorization, with semantic search and other shiny technologies. And I have resisted that temptation myself. I thought I would rather talk about some less shiny aspects or technologies, AI technologies that have been more mainstream, but that are at least equally important in my opinion. So this talk is about sustainable journalism, and what I mean by sustainable is commercially viable, commercially sustainable journalism. So going back to the Financial Times, as you might know, Financial Times is a very well-established news media organization with a history of more than 130 years. And as Ivan said in his opening remarks, we consider our top capital to be trust of our audience, indeed. And in order for us to be able to live to our values, to be able to hold power to account, we need to have a business model that enables us to be independent and that enables us to really focus on valuable journalism. So that's why, as someone from the previous panelists pointed out, at the FT, as an organization, we have the journalistic part of the house where journalists and editors, editorial desks are. But then we also have a commercial part of the house where our commercial teams, marketing teams are. And then in the middle, we have some product and technology teams and data engineers and data scientists who really try to bridge the gap between making journalism also a viable commercial product. So many people, especially journalists, editors, tend to think about the Financial Times as a media that started as a newspaper, and has grown into the digital world. But I think coming from product and technology background, we can equally think about the Financial Times and its journalism as a subscription-based business model that deals with content. And in this sense, it's quite similar to our other products that are subscription-based content models like Spotify, for example. However, the content over there is music, while in our case, with the Financial Times, the content is obviously news and financial analysis and financial reporting. So I would like to talk to you about that side of the house, or how we are using AI and AI tools in order to maintain a sustainable business model at the Financial Times. By the way, if you are not reading the text on this slide, don't worry. I don't expect you to read all of it. It's more as an illustration that, as in any subscription-based business model, we have something that we call the customer life cycle. So this is the journey of potential subscriber, or let's say at least a reader of the Financial Times, across the different phases of their interaction with our content. So we have pretty broad audience that occasionally reads some content from the Financial Times, but they are not yet paying subscribers. They are either anonymous to us, so they have arrived at an FT article through search, through a publication on social media, or through some other source. So to us, they are anonymous users, or some people choose to register in order to consume a bit more content. And in this phase of the customer life cycle, our commercial focus is on making those people engaged, basically helping them find the value in our content so that they can get interested in potentially becoming subscribers. And we use different AI tools in that stage. Just to give you a couple of examples, we use audience segmentation, for example, to understand what our audience or potential subscribers look like. And this is based on some demographic data that we know about them, their behavior with regards to interacting with FT content, and basically some basic data that helps us put them in a certain category and address them with certain marketing campaigns or propositions on how to become subscribers with the most suitable for them plan. We obviously have different digital products, so our aim is to suggest the best product to any user at the best point in time in order to convert. Then some of those people obviously get really interested in FT content, so they might decide to go for a trial license, which gives them access to all of the FT content for 1 month. And in this stage of the life cycle, we are really focused on getting them further engaged and building habits. So habits like, for example, reading newsletters from the FT, or downloading the mobile application on their mobile phone and checking articles from there. And again, we use a number of AI tools in order to do that. Since they are quite early in their journey, we don't have a lot of data about them, but we are still able to do some recommendations for newsletters, for example. Or again, we are able to cluster them in different groups so that we can approach people who are closer to a certain group of people in a way that we know is successful. Then later on, some of those people become subscribers, so they either go for a standard license or a premium license, and this is where we start to have really a much richer, deeper understanding of their interests, what they are reading, what they care about, what are the different formats that they would like to consume content. Is it like their early morning routine when traveling on the subway, checking through their mobile phone, or is it a more focused research where they literally spend hours in front of a screen going through certain content? Opening a footnote here, part of our audience is the so-called professional readers. So those are people working for law firms or consultants who really take the FT content as a key tool in their work. They need to consume that content in order to understand a certain company or a certain industry in order to do their job right. So for those people, we have further AI-based tools, and those are things like recommender models, both in terms of content recommendation or product recommendation, like how do we make sure that they have arrived at the right product for them. And we have a number of different ways where we engage. So for example, subscriber has finished reading an article, we can find a similar article to that, or we can find an article that has similar characteristics but is on a different topic, just to make sure that we break out of echo chambers and filters that we could go in organically. And then as people continue to be engaged, some of them might, over time, their usage might deteriorate. So again, there are AI tools and models that we can use in order to predict that. We have multiple algorithms that calculate propensity to churn or propensity to disengage, so that before the point of decision that the customer might think, you know, I'm not really consuming a lot of content, it might be good to cancel this subscription, we can actually target them with either a better offer for their usage or just make sure that we put in front of them the content that they would be really interested in so they continue to be engaged. So those are just very high-level directions of what we can do in order to make sure that the business model of a news media organization is sustainable and thrives, so that once the business model is sustainable, it can enable journalists to really focus on high-quality, trustworthy journalism rather than thinking about the more commercial aspects of this. Of course, this is not an exhaustive picture. We are doing a lot when it comes to understanding business performance. So we have a lot of really complex metrics that help us understand our audience and the commercial potential within our audience. So for example, for every subscriber of the FT, we are able to calculate and predict their lifetime value. This is the spending that they will have with the Financial Times over this whole life cycle journey that I talked about. Of course, the topic was framed as innovation in the newsroom, so there are a lot of things we are doing for the newsroom directly, though I thought maybe broadening the picture makes sense. But just to give you a hint of what those things are, for example, the editor who is responsible for curating the homepage uses some AI tools and algorithms to understand in real time the performance of different articles on the homepage, with the purpose to make sure that they make any rearrangement based on the performance of articles, for example. Or we have algorithms that help journalists understand trending topics. So we follow the environment and we are able to identify early signals that a certain topic is going to be trending. So again, hopefully this gives you a sense, a flavor of what is possible and what is possible outside of tools that directly generate content or generate images or are directly embedded in the journalistic work, but are quite important in order to make journalism sustainable. Happy to discuss more with questions, and with that, passing on to the next presenter. Thank you.
Okay, can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. I don't have any presentations, but I have some bullet points for you. Okay? 5 bullet points on how you can grab the low-hanging fruits of AI to strengthen your journalism. 5 bullet points on that, and then 5 bullet points on how we should cooperate cross-border together. You ready? Okay. Before I talk about the bullet points, just a little background. I've worked 30 years as a journalist, most of the time as an investigative journalist. Now I'm an editor in a very small newspaper, iTromsø. It's so small, you can't even notice it. We have only 20 journalists in the newsroom. 20 journalists. Our annual turnover is 5 million euro. That's all. 5 million euro. We're so small, we shouldn't even be here, okay? But anyway, half of that staff now is working with AI every day to invent new tools. And the reason we do that is because the less resources you have to find the good stories, to do the good journalism, the more important it is to use AI to strengthen your journalism. So that's why we're working with it, because what the newspapers really we need to get more of is journalists. And the problem for the journalists that they don't have enough time, they don't have enough resources to dig and to make good journalism. So that's why we're applying AI into our newsroom. So 5 bullet points. We have been working for AI for many years now, and our strategy is to get low-hanging fruits. The basis is data journalism. In Norway, it's a lot of open source, a lot of open data. Every time the journalist does repeat a work task, the second day, the third day, looking into that source, getting that information, when they repeat that task, we use AI to repeat it. Okay? So if you're tired of doing that work every day, get a robot to do it. And the way we do that is a way of AI called data from, we scrape municipality documents, annual reports, all kind of data. We put it inside the database. We get AI to find the needle in the haystack, find the important information in that data, and send a news alert to the journalist. That system we call Laila. Laila is we spell it L-A-I-L-A, Laila. She's our secret research assistant. So when I'm asleep, she's working all night, getting all the data, going through it, analyzing it, and sending me a news alert. When we put out rule-based systems, this is the rule-based system is like if X, then Y. So if important information in this document, send me that information. If you combine that rules, and they have many rules, you get a decision tree. And we use decision trees to get the information from several databases combined and then send a news alert. So that's the low-hanging fruit number 2. Then we use natural language understanding, which is many, I think, journalists have been using that for maybe 10 years now, to do text mining, to find important information in text documents. We use it to, so every night we scrape all the political documents from the municipalities, all kind of text documents, and we use text mining to find information, and we use a ranking system. So, because we won't spam down journalists with hundreds of alerts every morning. So we use a ranking system saying, so Laila, when I'm come to my job, I open my computer and Laila sends me 5 suggestions. These documents may have some news-ish content. Check it out. Then we have a system called an AI system, which is more and more popular now and is important for journalists, and that's supervised machine learning. The 3 first I told you about, that's easy peasy stuff. Okay, you can take a IT student on the bachelor level, employ it for some months, and he will make it or she will make you these sort of news alert systems. It's not that costly. Supervised machine learning, it takes a little more competence and money. We use supervised machine learning that the journalists train the algorithm to understand what is news-ish content in the documents. So so we have sort of copied the web portals that we get the information from. The journalist will see both a document, will see a summary, which is made by a large language model, a summary. And then the summary will help the journalist to see if that content in that document, if that has a sort of, can be a news story. If the journalists think that the algorithm did a good job, that Laila was good, he will take a thumb up, telling the algorithm, yeah, you're really doing great now. If Laila did not succeed, the journalist will take the thumb down. And this is the way we train the algorithm to find news-ish content in the documents. We also use large language models to make summaries. That's pretty common now. We also transcribe sound to text. OpenAI, they have a service called Whisper, and Whisper, you can use that in Bulgarian. So you can use that system to transcribe your interviews in Bulgarian to text. Problem with some of this is that sometimes you have to fine-tune them, okay? So we have to, we tried to use Whisper in Norway, but it didn't understand North Norwegian, okay? My dialect is too heavy for Whisper. So we fine-tuned Whisper on the North Norwegian dialect, and now we called it Flab, or kind of Whisper. Flab is short for a very strange fish. Have you heard about Babel fish from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy? No, I can take that story over a beer. But anyway, That's our babelfish, flab. It understands my dialect. And the last one is classification, prediction, regression. That's classification. Artificial intelligence is great at finding, okay, if you, let's say, because I think that, okay, the method we are using is, we call it lazy and forgetful. If you're lazy and forgetful, you can really do a great job as a journalist. Because then, if you're lazy, you have to try to let me know I made 5 bullet points. And then when you're forgetful, you have to get the machines to do the job for you. Okay, so classification. Let's say you have 100 documents. Okay, I'm so lazy. I'm not going to read all these 100 documents in my investigations. I get the AI robot Lila to say to me that, okay, 90 of these 100 documents, they don't contain any useful information. You should look at these 10. That's how we can use AI. So that was the bullet points. I've used my time, I guess, so if I can come back to the cross-border cooperation, okay, I'm happy to do that. Thanks.
Hey everyone, I'm Ville. I'm from the Finnish broadcasting company, head of data investigations. I don't have any slides, but I have some world-class Finnish humor. And that was about it. Sorry. You can use your imagination. I have, before we go into any opportunities, I'm gonna start with a list of recent questions from journalists, and I've edited all this data for me. Can you find out who this person is? We just have this image of his face. Where this video was taken, yeah, the quality is quite bad. How can we keep an eye on this physical location? And can we do this for a real long time? And the last one, I have gathered a lot of documents and notes from the past years, and they might be really relevant now. Is this something you could help me with? So this is our newsroom mosh pit. I've heard some metal references before. So we're a 6-member team of data scientists, investigative journalists, and developers. And we work in collaboration with journalists from different departments. And I can say that I welcome any robot who has spare time to work with us. So if anyone knows, you can tip us. So the first level of our work is to just clear the obstacles you might have in a journalistic research or investigation. And then at the same time, we try to pick special projects where we can use computational methods. For example, last spring, we did a story, well, beginning summer, we did a story where we compared the texts of the government program to texts published by lobby groups and political parties. And then we could show like who is speaking in the government program and how much. And in that project, we experimented with different methods. We tried out OpenAI embeddings, tried out different approaches. But in the end, what was interesting was that when we showed the end result, it became clear that we want to show something that looks really similar. So basically, identical strings of text side by side. So that was really important from the audience side. So the second level of opportunities we have is to get this knowledge into wider use in our organization. So as I said, we're a small team and we need to think about things, how we scale things up. And so we have workshops around open source intelligence, how to analyze satellite images, how to use geographic information. And we're really glad there are tools like InVid. Actually, thanks, Valentin, if you're here. Yes. So we can, instead of giving people potatoes, we can say, this is how you can grow a potato yourself. I'm not a potato farmer. It might be much harder. And one thing is that we want to also spread the human knowledge, not just to say that, okay, here's a tool for this, use this. We want to have the kind of network inside our company, which we can always use. And to give an example, like if you want to locate an image, the best expert for that certain image might be someone in your company you don't know, and she's just someone who's really big fan of Bellingcat and just wants to help you. And that's really, really great. So that's something we wanna grow. But this is kind of just simple culture change in a way, and it takes time. And going back to the last journalist question, like about these big sets of material someone has gathered during the years, we really want to be able in the future to put data into structured forms, like to give an example, like I'm a journalist myself, and every time I got a story assignment, I would just like Google like what was written about that, and if I was lucky, I would see all the stories that were written before me. But we really need better ways to go back and look at previous investigations, previous data sets, enrich these data sets with manual workflows and AI workflows, and to see how we can gradually like make better stories and make better research. And accuracy is, of course, important. And if I think about the kind of tools we are using, we're doing machine translations, something with computer vision, transcription. Often the kind of tools that are good enough for us, and we always have the human element here. So that's something that we can always pass into a human if we get something that we're not sure of. And finally, there's a talk about efficiency and using AI to create efficiency in the newsroom. And if I think about like what the internet will look like in the future, I'm a bit pessimistic about that. But if I think about the journalistic research, I become really optimistic, and I think we will be able to make the kind of stories that would have been nowadays killed because they are too work intensive or require too much other methods that the journalists don't know how to use. And at the same time, we are able to create better stories with completely new methods, which will have a huge impact, and also doing more cross-border things by default. Thank you.
All right, my main goal right now would be to translate everything you said to our audience. I know that most of the people here in the room and looking us online are working journalists or journalism students, so I'll try to, put it into a context and trying to explain how everything you said and your own experience is applicable to their own media outlets out there. First of all, our viewers should know that Philip next to me has an incredible professional experience as a reporter and photographer on the ground in Africa and the Middle East, and covering all kinds of conflicts and very, very interesting stories. So, Philip, I was really curious after your short presentation, when you set your foot on the ground, on location somewhere, it's all about storytelling. Can you give us a specific example of how you implement innovative technologies for storytelling in particular at BBC News Labs? Because I saw that on your presentation.
Yeah, I think certainly when you're on the ground, things like that are very far from your mind. All you're really interested in at that point is just gathering enough information to be able to tell a story and to make sure it's as accurate as possible and to get as many diverse and representative voices. When it comes to the actual storytelling, I think the way that we can now segment stories and break them up into different parts allows us to tell stories in different ways to different audiences depending on their needs. You may have a story that is of national importance, for example, that people who are living in a particular area may want to understand in a very different way to people who are living in the rest of the country. So you can reorder the information that you're showing them potentially to tell those stories in different ways and to prioritize certain elements of information. We also know that people read the news in different modes. You know, they might be looking just for a catch-up. They might be looking to be informed about one very specific topic. They might be more of a sort of like browsing mode where they've just got some free time and they want to read around something. And if you can engage people in those different ways, depending on how they want to tell that story, you can meet their needs better.
Thanks a lot. Kristina, I was really surprised to hear that you and your colleagues have been using AI for the last 5 years or so, although it's something quite new for me, at least personally. I work at a media which is considered to be one of the mastodons in Bulgaria, BTV Media Group, but compared to BBC, for example, or Financial Times, it's a small outlet. Can you give us a peek behind the curtain on how many people are on your team, and is it something really expensive to have in your media?
Is it working?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, indeed, the Financial Times has been using data science, the more statistical, traditional methods and algorithms, as well as machine learning and AI for, I think, more than 5 years. It takes an investment to build the capability in-house. To your question, how big is the team? Specifically the data science team, which is a central team that is kind of serving different departments in the company, is about 15 people now. Part of them, by the way, are in Sofia. Half of the team is located in Sofia, half in London. However, if we look at what it takes to really enable the organization to do more advanced stuff with data science, there are other disciplines that need to be there. So we have a much broader team of about 100 people that consist of data engineers, for example. Those are the people who are responsible to ingest data from different sources, to store the data, to transform it, to expose it for other teams. We have business intelligence people, we have insight analysts who are using different algorithms to extract insights or knowledge from the data. So that makes a pretty large team. That doesn't, however, come to say that if a news media organization is looking to utilize AI technologies, they need to build a team of 100 people in order to start. I think the entry barrier is much lower than that, specifically for some of the more mainstream algorithms like recommender models, even LLMs, they are available for free. Well, wherever there is something for free, you are paying with something, in this case with your data. So that don't take that literally. But my point is there are enough tools out there that are getting more and more accessible in terms of price point that enable teams to start on their journey. And they might be not super highly customizable to the specific news media organization, or they might provide some like common logic, but still they would do the job for entry into this. And as the organization matures and grows and finds where the actual value is, they could invest. But we had a really interesting example here where in an organization of 20 people, you said half of them are probably working with AI. So obviously there are different ways to enter.
Okay, thanks a lot, Rune. I see a dear friend of mine, a colleague of mine, Spas Pasov. Spas, please raise your hand, please. That's Spas. He works in Varna, in the countryside, excellent journalist, but also he works with a lot of local journalists in Bulgaria, in one very brave community of independent journalists here in the country. How, for example, Spas and all his local colleagues here in Bulgaria can take advantage of your know-how, your skills, your professional background at your company, iTromsø? How they exchange knowledge with you? Can you give us a particular example? How can they do that?
It depends on what kind of data you can get access to. But as a local newspaper, we are very into looking into what are the local politicians up to, what are the largest local companies up to. So on a local level, we scraped political papers that are in the municipality. We get annual reports for every company, and we use AI to monitor. So every time it's a new document and every time it's a new annual report, we get an alert. I'm too lazy to read all that documents and annual reports. So I have an AI robot that tries to find the important information in these documents, both in the tables and in the text. And it's possible to do that in every local, if you get access to the data, it's possible to do that. And we can exchange, if you like, we can exchange the codes and the way we work on the local, regional level. Yeah.
Sounds like a plan to me. Thanks. Ville, if you were running a newsroom, no matter if in Bulgaria or Finland, and you could hire a new person get a new person on board, what kind of a professional profile would you look first? Audience engagement people, data analysts, data engineers, what kind of person would you like to hire first? And why, of course?
Probably someone who is really curious about things. But technically, I don't really have that kind of requirements because it's really about the persona. Like you often see it really quickly if someone is a good fit for the team, and it's not about a certain programming language or a certain technology. It's more about, is this the kind of person who will learn a new programming language if needed and doesn't stress about it too much and thinks about, wants to always put problems into smaller parts and trying to, for example, people who would like to kind of disassemble some kind of machine or some other interesting hobbies, for example.
So it means that all of these young journalists all here in the room and watching online and journalism students should not be afraid to apply to be on board and in teams like yours. I mean, it's not crucial if they don't have the right training, right?
Yeah, and there are lots of communities where you can kind of, for example, Bellingcat is one, but are there other communities where you can train, for example, open source intelligence thing and verification techniques? So, yeah.
Okay, yes? Sure.
Yeah, just to share a bit of my experience on that, in the data science team that I lead right now, a couple of the people are coming from a journalistic background, and they used to work for years in the editorial team before deciding to switch career tracks. So that's totally possible, applicable, and I see that quite often.
Yeah, and I also add that, okay, before you had to be maybe do some training, used to learn programming like Python or R or something like that. But now you have really good open source programs like DataIQ, which is, you can use DataIQ, it's free, and you can use that to do machine learning on your own data. And it's very easy to learn. So you don't have to be a programmer to do data journalism and use AI on your own journalist projects anymore.
Yeah, and I think I'd add that just generally in journalism, the most important quality is to be inquisitive and to be interested in things. The thing I loved about everything in my career is just the fact that I'm learning every day, whether it's you're becoming a mini expert on the current conflict you're covering, or if you're learning about the latest advances in technology, you're just learning something new every day and finding a way to convey that to people. And as Rune said, there's so many tools out there that mean you don't need to be an expert in programming to be able to access code. And a lot of it as well is about networking and find the right people to help you. It's a very collaborative space. So as a journalist, you might not have coding skills, but you can search out someone who does and collaborate on that together. So.
Yeah, as we do as reporters on a daily basis, no matter the topic. Okay, I would like to open the floor for questions right now. Go ahead, guys. We have a question over there.
Thanks. Absolutely excellent session. Thank you very much. And Boris, I thought or sorry, Ivan, I beg your pardon. Ivan, your questions were superb as well. I had a comment and a question for Rune. I've had the pleasure over the years of collaborating on a number of occasions with Finnish colleagues. In particular, in fact, at the University of Tromsø, which I visited on a number of occasions. And I found the Finnish just, generally my experience has been extremely good of the degree of collegiality and collaborative sense that comes out of Finland. They're very, very good collaborators. And I wondered, Rune, what you seem to have something else you wanted to say about collaboration. I just wondered what that was.
All right, I have five bullet points now. But I think the most important is that we could do a cross-border cooperation on fine-tuning large language models. We could do it on developing pipelines for using AI in the whole production line for news production. I think we should have, we can share routines for how to have a journalist in the loop, so we can be assured that if the large language model do a hallucination, how do we be sure that the journalist can fetch it up? We have to have cross-border training, so that, let's say, every journalist in this room will be trained to use GPT-4 as a co-pilot in the newsroom. We work a lot of, I think we have now a cooperation with 5 universities in Norway, most about LLMs, how to do that. But since we work with the universities, we have to share our findings with the rest of the press and the researchers. So, and I think that's very important, that we are willing to share our knowledge with our colleagues in the press. But you're from Finland, so what do you think?
First of all, thank you for kind words. Yeah, I believe I mentioned like cross-border by default. would be the future of journalism and collaboration. And I think the things you mentioned are the things where we could start. And also, I believe in the future there will be more hard problems we can tackle together. And some of those things are really, if it's Nordic cooperation or European cooperation, if you think about EU or this kind of institutions, there's a lot of good playing field where we can work together.
My question is, usually newspapers usually have a team or a direction where they go, and they have specific audience. So you mentioned an AI that can understand the engagement of possible articles, like the editor would normally. Is it aimed only on this specific your newspaper audience, or does it look at different articles or competitive or even different themed newspapers?
In our case specifically, I think what you are referring to is the audience segmentation that I mentioned, which helps us understand the types of people who are interacting with our content. So how we do that specifically in our case is, first of all, any data that we use about users, we should have consent for. So therefore, depending on where a user is in their journey, we have initially much less data. So our segmentation is really quite basic, and it is based on mostly on the behavior of the user with the content. So what type of articles they are really interested in, how much time they have spent reading a certain article, etc. Later on, as they engage more deeply with the FT and as they provide their consent for us to use their data for more targeted personalization or for some more advanced features, we are able to add additional data points. But in all cases, we are using just the data we have access to and consent for, and we are not using mechanisms that are outside of our domain. As I started with the notion of trust, as Ivan also started these remarks, and for the FT it is of utmost importance to be responsible with our readers and subscribers' data. So we have the highest standards in terms of data privacy, data governance, ethical AI. We go beyond just the data privacy and governance aspects of using the data for AI and into the ethical aspects as well. So any model that we develop internally or buy off the shelf goes through a specific checklist on whether it's really developed according to ethical standards, and it doesn't accelerate natural biases or data, or just accelerate some gaps in the data. Hopefully that gives you some idea.
We have another question on that.
Okay, I have a question for Ville. You said your tool, Lila, wasn't it you?
Yeah.
Yep. Your Lila is your best servant and browsing all the municipal information while you're sleeping. So, but I have a question, kind of ironic based on my own experience. What about if your Lila is browsing through unexisting local media? What about if your Lila is browsing through municipal documents full with fake information or through unreadable PDF files? So this is the situation in Bulgaria, and we are trying to use the artificial intellect in this environment.
Yeah. The machine we have, it's scraping every night all the PDF documents, And then we download it into a database, and then we make a automated summary. But we have to have a journalist in the loop to check that knowledge. I have an example of we use a large language model to make the summary that didn't understand that the word "not" is important. So it made a summary without the word "not," and that was a mistake. So we had to change the model. Hopefully it will work better. Yeah.
Do we have more time? A few more minutes. A few more minutes. Okay. More questions, guys? Okay. If you don't have, I have questions for you. There was an artificial intelligence summit in London last week, which received worldwide coverage, partly because the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak sat down like a professional journalist and talked with Elon Musk, but mostly because the topic of AI is becoming more and more relevant all around the world. I would like to hear from you, Philip. What do you think that the general direction of using AI and innovation in media should be from now on?
Should be is a very debatable topic. I think, personally, I think it's trying to actually create any content, any news is, for me, off limits in that I think you're not really, if you're prompting it with enough information to actually write the piece, then you can write the piece yourself. I think the use case that Rune just mentioned, where it's effectively acting as a source, as a tip-off, is a very good direction, because, I mean, the worst that can happen if it scrapes a piece of misinformation is that you waste your time checking that misinformation. But I think it can. I think its use is going to be inevitable. It's just another tool. Someone mentioned in an earlier panel, the use of Google and how that, now makes you go further in terms of what's expected of you compared to a few decades ago. So I think it will inevitably have an impact on what we do. It will make some tasks easier. It will make some tasks a lot harder, such as identifying misinformation. We have in the BBC a team of journalists that are dedicated for fact-checking and verifying disinformation, and I can only see that their job is going to get much harder as the quality and the volume of disinformation grows. So, as journalists, our brand is everything, really, and we have to earn the trust of our audiences and keep that trust. And I think journalism will have a much more important role to play in the future in that respect, because we will become trusted. Well, I hope that we will become trusted arbiters of information. So when there is so much disinformation out there, people will turn to organizations that they trust in order to navigate that.
Thanks a lot. Questions, guys? Questions from the audience? No? Can we wrap it up? Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you very much. Thank you for coming to Sofia, all of you who came from abroad, and for sharing this incredible experience and know-how of yours with us today. Thank you once again for the invitation of the WordPress Institute and David MacDonald himself. Thanks a lot.
Yeah. Thank you. That was a great last panel. Oftentimes we are losing interest, but you guys did a great job. So, and really thank everybody here. Thank you. The general part of the program is now over. That's the good news or bad news. The other good news is that tomorrow we have 3 different workshops. The bad news is that they're all fully registered. So if you're registered for that workshop, please attend. Unfortunately, if you haven't registered, we're kind of full on that. But I really do want to thank the America for Bulgaria Foundation for supporting this conference, and for Association of European Journalists in Bulgaria for really helping us make it work and make it happen. And thank all of you for attending and making this, I think, a really great conference. So thanks, and see you next year. Yeah, great job.